Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. What a glorious day, isn't it? Look at all these faces. I guess you guys are ready for heaven. Let's rise to our feet. Let's come before our Lord. He's got a wonderful day in store for us, going to hear great and mighty things. Let's bow our hearts before the King of all creation. Psalm 95 says, "Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving, exalt him with music and song. For the Lord is great, great above all gods. Come, let us bow down and worship. Kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God. We are his people in the flock under his care. Lord, we thank you for your goodness. We've come to worship you, to give you all the glory and praise. We welcome you in this place. Lord, at your name, the mountains will bow before you. And your saints are here to bless you. Let's worship our King. At your name, the mountains shake and crumble. At your name, the ocean roar and tumble. Lord. Please be seated, folks. It's good to see you.
I'm glad to have you with us. I'm wondering how many of you are here because you heard this on Hope FM? Okay. See, I asked them before you did, Rob. So, yeah, praise the Lord. I'm telling everybody, if you have a creation conference, everyone comes. If you have a conference on prayer, no one comes. So you have to beg people to come to a prayer meeting. But this is one of my creation, apologetics, prophecy are among my favorite topics. I love doing these kind of things. We do this because it's really very reasonable and rational to be a believer in Jesus Christ. It does not require a leap of faith. It's not something you have to jump off a cliff, to believe in. And there's a lot of people out there that say the opposite. They say we're stupid, for believing that God created the heavens and the earth. And I say, you're stupid if you believe that something came from nothing. So that's what they believe. And I tell people, you have two choices. You can believe something came from nothing, or you can believe God created it all. And you know what? They are both faith-based positions. There's not a person you talk to whose worldview is not grounded in their faith in something. And I would rather have my faith in Jesus Christ than in, the world, the flesh, and the devil, and that is all. So the reason we're doing this is because there are answers to questions. When people say, how can you believe the Bible? It's so full of myths and fairy tales. It's got mistakes and all this other kind of stuff. 95% of the objections people raise to the Bible can be answered by a first semester Bible college student. And the other 5% can be answered by the end of the second year of Bible college. Really, there is no question that anybody has about the Bible today that wasn't asked before, and there's already answers. Someone who thinks they found something new in the Bible is deluding themselves, because there's an answer for everything. You just have to be willing to look for it and know what it is. And I read a survey or saw a survey earlier this week. I'm going to try to find the numbers. I'm not going to give you those numbers right now, but if I can remember where I saw that, I'll look for it. So I just want to tell you the format for today. We have with us Dr. Rob Carter with Creation Ministries. He's got a PhD in marine biology. He does all kinds of fancy research. I don't know how to pronounce all the words, but he'll tell you about it. He's a fascinating person to talk to. So we're going to have 3 sessions this morning. Session 1 is going to start in about 1 minute or 2 minutes. Then we'll have a break, and then we'll have session 2, and then we'll have a break. We'll have session 3. During the breaks, we have lots of snacks outside. Mostly if you're on a keto diet, stuff you wouldn't want to eat, but it tastes good. My doctor told me if it tastes good, don't eat it, and you'll be fine. And at the end, we're going to have lunch. So we have 180 sandwiches coming from ShopRite in Medford, and we have macaroni salad, potato salad, coleslaw, and stuff. So if you stay till the end, you're going to get lunch, no cost for anything. It's just our gift to you. We like to do this. So during the breaks, the bathrooms are downstairs to the left. Also, downstairs below us is the bookstore. We rearranged the basement to be a bookstore, and Creation Ministry sent us along a good selection of their books. 25, 30 years ago, I hated selling things in church. I thought, well, Jesus turned over the tables of the money changers. We're not going to do that. But I came to realize when I grew up that, this stuff is worthwhile. It's good resources for us to have. And the people who wrote it and produced it, deserve to be paid. And I don't think any of them are millionaires. So I'm not going to complain about that. We have a great selection of stuff downstairs. Rob, I'm sure, will talk about that. I already mentioned the bathrooms. If there's a line, then the next building over, our school building, the side door is unlocked, or it will be during the breaks, and there's a bathroom in that building also, so you can use that bathroom also. Okay? So at the end of each session, I'm going to come up, remind you where the bathrooms are, and I'll look at the clock, and I'll tell you how much time we have before the next session begins. Okay? So here's Dr. Rob Carter.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My microphone is on? No? No? It's on. They'll figure it out. Okay. I beg your prayers. A week ago at this time, I was in Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona, and I was running a fever, and I had a giant frog in my throat. So thank God for the human immune system. What you're about to hear is going to be probably the strangest sermon you've ever heard in the church before. What I'm going to attempt to do here is I'm going to try to rip the rug out from underneath your comfort. And I'm going to try to describe the nature of reality. And everything's going to get very bizarre very quickly. And I'm going to try to shake your faith in what you think is true and what you think is real. On purpose. Because by taking man's understanding and doing this, all that does is amplify God. You ready? All right, I got 3 big ideas for you. 1, I'm going to try to demonstrate to you that science depends upon philosophy. Scientists don't want you to know that, but absolutely it's dependent upon philosophy. 2nd, I'm going to try to impress upon you that there are more things we don't know than we do know. And probably half of what we think we know is wrong, we just haven't figured out what's wrong yet. That's the track record of science. And 3rd, I'm going to try to impress upon you that it's reasonable to trust the Bible. All right, can we handle this? All right, so let me ask you a question. Think of something you think is true. Your mother's name, your birthday, the color of your car, whatever. Think of something. Everyone got something you're thinking is true? And how do you know it's true? Really? How do you know you're awake right now? How do you know that aliens didn't create the universe yesterday and fill your mind with false information? You don't. We had to take a giant leap of faith even to start off by the simple question, how do you know what you know? Well, someone pointed at their brain, right? Of course, you're using your mind to think. And we have no reason to think that aliens created the universe yesterday. And we have lifetimes, and over our lifetime, we accumulate facts and events, and we kind of put everything into this framework of understanding as we're trying to figure out how the world works. Use your brain to do that, your God-given brain. But sometimes, especially for you students, there's too much information. It's coming at you fast, and what you do? You learn all that stuff, your history test, you take the test, and the next day you remember nothing. Because there's too much information. And the worst part is that some of the information isn't true. And you haven't learned enough yet to know what's true and not true. You just have to take it on faith that Julius Caesar lived in X year. How do you know that? And some of the people giving us information are lying. And we do not yet know who or what they're lying about. because that takes decades of experience. And there are some people in this world that are speaking very confidently, and they're talking absolute gibberish, right? Any politician. Well, I'm not supposed to talk about politics, but you get the idea, right? There are some people that speak with authority, but they're not speaking truth. And yet, who are we? We don't know what this person knows. I mean, could you walk up to the world's most famous scientist and say, Mr. Scientist, you're wrong, and this is why you're wrong? Even experts in that person's field will argue with him, and he'll think, or she will think they're still not wrong. Oh no, I know this stuff. I am right. You're the one who's wrong. So how do we, when we don't have all knowledge, we don't have all authority, we don't have expertise in every field, how are we as Christians supposed to walk through this world when the world is telling us everything in the Bible is wrong? Do you have a spine? Are you strong enough to stand in the face of a lot of adversity where everyone's laughing at you? You know what? It's no different for the other people either. Everyone has someone contradicting them. Everyone in the world. It doesn't matter what field, doesn't matter what subject. We're all equally in a very uncomfortable position of not knowing what we think we know. And here's the worst part about the modern world. You go online, you've already been pigeonholed. They know who you are just by a couple of key clicks, a couple of searches. Oh, one of those people. And they'll put you in a box and feed you the information that you want to hear. Because if they feed you information you don't like, you go to some other platform. So if you go on Google and you type something in, you'll get different search results than me. If you go on YouTube, my YouTube channel is going to be World War II history, hydroponic gardening, creationism. Probably none of you are going to get results like I get. Because you've already been placed in a box and spoon-fed information. Oh, that's very hard now. Because you think you know something. Yeah, you know something in your echo chamber. How often do we get outside of our little comfort zone and interact with people who hate us? Or interact with people who have a completely different view of the world? It's not easy. Because I like hanging around with people who eat my foods and listen to my music and talk my talk. I don't like hanging around with people that are very different. And we're all like that. Because humanity, we're clan-based. We're tribal. This is our nature. And we tend to not like people from the other tribes. So, how do you know what you know? If you're pre-selected and if you gravitate to certain information sources and you don't have all the information and all the authority and all the knowledge. How did the universe come to be? How old is the universe? Is Jesus really the Son of God? Did Jesus rise from the dead? How do you know? 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see as through a glass darkly. I love that. But then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known. That's a beautiful passage. We, on purpose, don't have all knowledge. In fact, even in heaven, even after 1,000,000 years in heaven, you can ask Jesus all the questions you want. You're not going to have all knowledge. Because we're not God. But we trust our God. Because our God, by definition, is good. And by definition, is trustworthy. And yet there are huge questions that we can't answer. But nobody can. This is on the cover of New Scientist magazine a couple years ago. Why do we exist? Why do we grieve? Why are we irrational? Why does evolution happen? I'm sorry. Why are we conscious? Why does time only move forward? The greatest minds in the world have no answer to some of the most basic questions in the universe. And these are the things that keep scientists up at night. Because sometimes the answers to those questions are God. And they don't want that. But there's so much in the universe we don't understand. Like, what's gravity? Nobody knows. What's light? What's a photon? What's electromagnetism? What are magnets? These are the things that drive our modern world. We have no clue what those things are. The most fundamental things of the universe, the forces we harness all the time. I mean, the electromagnetic signals from my computer to this wire, to that, to this, to that. I mean, it is unbelievable how we've harnessed these things. We have no idea what these things are. We just know how to use them. And we think we're smart? I have an article that I wrote in our Creation magazine. One of my favorite things I've ever written. I titled it, "We Are Less Than Dust." And in this magazine, in this article, I said, okay, I want to explain the human body and what we're actually composed of. We're made of atoms, right? Okay, what's an atom like? It's tiny, but there's a nucleus and there's electrons around the nucleus. How far away are the electrons from the nucleus? Well, I said, let's make a nucleus as large as the sun. So we'll compare it to our solar system, okay? We have a nucleus now, it's as large as the sun. Where's the first electron? How far away from the sun? Well, the answer is 13 times further away from Pluto. Oh. And in between is nothing. Oh. In fact, if you were a molecule, so if you had a molecule of two nuclei and they're sharing an electron, they'd be 26 times farther away from each other than Pluto is from the sun. Comparatively, that's the size of the sun at Mercury. It's 1.3 degrees. At Earth, it's about half a degree. At Pluto, it's only 75 seconds, which is a tiny fraction of a degree. Multiply that times 26, or divide that by 26. The sun would be a pinpoint of light. It would look like a star. You would not be able to hold up a ruler and measure the width of the sun in our doubled two nuclei sharing an electron model. And in between is empty space. Your body, your precious flesh is made of nothing. You are a vapor. You are a cloud of tiny little points that are separated by vast spaces. How does that make you feel? And yet the God of creation sent his son down to die for you little dust clouds. How does that make you feel? The reason you can see me is because these mysterious things called photons come and hit an electronic force field. The electrons that bridge between all the atoms in my body reflect photons of certain colors. And some people reflect different colors, hence we have different skin tones and hair color and eye color. But literally, I am an electronic force field. That's what you're seeing. The benches you're sitting on are electronic force fields of emptiness. In fact, in this article, I calculated if you take all the nuclei of all the 10 to the 80th particles in the entire universe that we know of, get rid of the electrons and take the nuclei and squish them together into a giant ball of nuclei, how large would that ball be? The whole universe now, squished into a ball, how big would it be? It would fit inside the orbit of Neptune. The entire universe is smaller than our solar system. What on earth? You're 99.9999999% empty space. Genesis 3:19, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. This is true. Now I can look at the most arrogant scientist in the world and say, dude, I know what you're made of, man. All right, I take it there are some creation groupies in this room. Thank you for coming. For those of you who have never been introduced to the world of biblical creation, welcome. This is hopefully going to rock your world a little bit. I am a scientist by training. I'm not a philosopher, but I love philosophy, as you can tell. And I like talking about what we don't know. See, most scientists, the smartest guy in the room doesn't like to be wrong. And they don't like to talk about things they don't understand. So they tend to focus on, well, we now know, blah, 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 blah. But they ignore all the skeletons in the closet, the monsters under the bed, the why questions. I like asking the why questions. But if you're new to this and you're like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about, or maybe you're like, hey, this is really awesome, I want more, let me introduce you to our email newsletter. Once a week, usually every Friday, we'll send out a list of all the articles we published that week. And we've got, I think, 13,000 articles on our website. And we're always writing new ones. We might interview a former evolutionist. There's no idea what might appear. Sometimes there'll be some big news announcement about evolution. And we're like, wait a minute. So we'll have one of our people write an article. And it'll be on our website by Thursday night. So by Friday, when this newsletter comes out, the people getting it, I mean, this goes out to, 100,000 people. I don't know what the number is. But they'll have an answer to the thing they heard yesterday that was challenging their faith. If I know a lot of people in this room already get our newsletter, but if you don't, we're going to pass around a sign-up form that looks like this. We ask for a name, an email address, and a zip code. And the zip code is there. How many of you came here because you got one of our emails? Just one? Okay, maybe some downstairs. Usually I get a couple, because when we send a guy like me out on the road, and there's about 30 of me on a speaking circuit, we will, around the world, we will send an email out to some radius, say, hey, come on, bring a friend. And so I'm always getting people coming. So these are going to go around as I'm speaking, and when they get to you, psh, and if you don't want it, no big deal, just pass the person next to you. All right, I'm not sure who's going to handle that, but they're coming up in a minute. All right. So as that's happening, let me ask you a question. What is evolution? There you go. A theory. Okay, but what is it? The idea of evolution, what is it? The word evolution means unfolding. It means, we have a stack here. We're not going to pull off individual ones. All right, we got it. We got it. The word means unfolding. It means change over time. But you know what? I believe species change over time. In fact, I believe that God created his species to adapt and change over time because he's smart. So if I believe in change over time, the definition of the word cannot be change over time. In fact, the word evolution, if you're going to define it, it must include the phrase common ancestry. It's a belief that enough change over enough time in the right direction can lead to an explanation of the common ancestry of all things. That's not the same thing as, oh, things change. Well, duh, of course they change. But what are the changes downhill? What are the changes in the wrong direction? For example, sickle cell anemia is very common in Central Africa. Why? Because if you're a carrier for that trait, your red blood cells can sickle, and that kills the malaria parasites that live in red blood cells. So if you're a carrier for sickle cell anemia, you're much more likely to survive into adulthood. So is that evolution? Is that natural selection? Is it adaptation? Yeah, it's adaptation and natural selection, but it's in a downhill direction. Antibiotic resistance, almost all the examples of natural selection I know of, what's being selected is something that's broken. So it's not change over time. So if I ask you what is evolution, I'm going to say it's the application of a philosophy called naturalism. The belief that nature's all there is. The belief that natural processes can explain everything that's ever happened in the whole history of the universe. Wow. That cuts out God right in the beginning, doesn't it? So if naturalism is true, there's no miracles. There's no outside interfering force in the universe. Naturalism, a philosophy, if you apply that to the study of living things, biology, you will get evolution. But if I'm not an evolutionist, I'm a theist. I'm not a naturalist, I'm a theist. I believe in God. Well, if you take a belief in God and apply that to the study of living things, biology, you'll get some form of creation. Now, that might be evolutionary creation, it might be old earth creation, it might be day age. It's all sorts of versions of this. If you want to put me in a box and ask me who I am and what I believe, I think I'm going to have to use the phrase young earth creation. Now, I didn't always believe that. Not even close. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming into this position. But part of my transformation was a study of philosophy and realizing the philosophical underpinnings of evolution. Oh yeah. See, I have a PhD. What's that stand for? Yeah, piled higher and deeper. That's what I always hear. I have a doctorate in philosophy. What philosophy? Naturalism. The philosophical everything in all of my training was 100% naturalistic. Even though I wasn't a naturalist. They didn't know that. Science absolutely depends upon a philosophy. So the question is, which philosophy are you going to adopt? If you're a Christian, you can't adopt naturalism. I'll get back to that in a second, though. I want to do this first. Ignore the television. Let's watch what happens on this television. That right there, that is a nucleotide, one of the letters in your DNA. Let's take this DNA and just turn it into a protein, shall we? First of all, we're going to need a machine. Oop, there it is. It's called a polymerase. You have multiple different types of polymerases in your body, but this one, we're oversimplifying everything. We're watching the nucleotides magically come in the front. They're being lined up. The DNA is being opened up. We're ignoring the 20 or 30 accessory proteins that are all involved in this process. And your cell is going to make a copy of the DNA on one strand, and that copy is called RNA. Now, we ignore the fact that your body is chopping up the RNA and adding all sorts of things and doing lots of modifications to it before you make the protein. But now we have this thing called messenger RNA. And we're going to make that into a protein using these things. These are transfer RNAs. On the bottom of the transfer RNA, there's a 3-letter code that matches up the 3 letters of the RNA inside this other machine. This is called the ribosome. And the ribosome will match 3 letters at a time of these RNAs, but the top of them, they have an amino acid. The amino acid, of course, are building blocks of a protein. And they will pop off, and it happens about this rate. If it makes a mistake, it actually back up and fix it sometimes. Crazy. But most proteins, that red strand there is a protein. If left to themselves, they'll just form a bird's nest. They need help folding. So these other proteins, this is called chaperones, grab onto that unfolded protein. And they will chaperone it to another protein. This is called, actually, it's a multi-protein complex called a chaperonin. By the way, every step I'm showing you, there's Nobel Prizes, PhD dissertations, millions of dollars of research, and yet we don't know how this thing works yet. We know a protein goes in one end, it gets folded. If it's folded improperly, it'll be chopped up. But folded properly, it's spit out the other end, and now we have a 3-dimensional protein. Now think of this. That is a 20-letter alphabet. We started from a 4-letter alphabet. DNA is A, C, G, and T. There are 20 amino acids. DNA is also a line. I mean, your chromosome 1 is a foot long. That's one molecule in your body. It's a foot long, but it's so thin you can't see it. Remember in math class, what has length but no width? A line, right? And a line is one-dimensional. It only has length. Well, DNA effectively is a one-dimensional string. But that one-dimensional string has a 4-letter alphabet that's transcribed into another 4-letter alphabet in RNA that's then translated into 20-letter alphabet in proteins. And the chemical function of that protein has nothing to do with the chemistry of the A, C, G, and T. We went from one language to a radically different language, from a string to a 3-dimensional object, which actually is a 4-dimensional object, because most proteins, they change shape over time. That's how they work. They work in the fourth dimension, which is time. Now we're talking about some really weird things here. We're going between dimensions, yeah. And without that process working, life is impossible. That protein right there might be one of the proteins that's used to transcribe the DNA into RNA. Without that protein, you can't have DNA. Without that protein, you can't have other proteins. As soon as we start looking in biology, we have what's called chicken and egg problems. But it's not just one, it's multiple chicken and egg problems. Because there are proteins that are necessary to hold the entire system together, and yet the system can't exist before that protein exists, and you need the code for that protein in the DNA. That's actually the bugbear of evolutionary theory. It's not, can you form DNA out of a warm little pond? Well, the answer is no. But even if you could, so what? Can you form cells in a warm little pond? No, but even if you could, so what? We can give the evolutionists all the parts they want. DNA, proteins, long sugar chains. We can give them cell membranes and billions of years. And they're never going to get living things. Because living things require information. And information doesn't come from random. Information comes from a mind. So this is God organizing, not through naturalism, but through theism, organizing just chemicals, adding energy, winding up the cell, putting all the little parts in place, and then letting go. And once you have living things, they can be modified. Okay, great. They can change, they can adapt. Great. Why? Because our God put it into them to be able to do that. But starting from scratch, that's where the evolution fails. Look at Psalm 92:4, considering that little system we just showed you. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the work of your hands, I sing for joy. Have you ever sung for joy in the middle of biology class? That's because it wasn't taught to you correctly. Biology only screams that there's a creator, and it only glorifies that creator. And the more we dig, the more we learn, and it gets insane very quickly because a biology student gets lost in all the words. Because we have a name for every little thing and every little part of every little thing and of the subpart of the subpart. Because that's what we do as scientists. We like to name things. Life is really complicated. But you know, modern science did not come to us through Greek philosophy. All those mathematicians, all that philosophy, it was stillborn. They could not do science. Why? Because if there's a Zeus, you can't do science. What if Zeus doesn't like you? You set up your very carefully controlled experiment, you give half of your rats some cancer treatment and half of them some placebo, and you walk away, and in the middle of the night, Zeus sends a lightning bolt down and kills half your rats because he doesn't like you. If the universe isn't constant, if there's fickleness in the universe, if there are gods, if there are pixies in the garden who sneak through your windows at night and mischievously rearrange the labels on your test tube, if there's a Loki, you can't do science. It took getting rid of the paganism before science could take root. In fact, you ever struggle in science class? You remember those horrible formulas you had to learn in physics and in chemistry? And, oh, not another formula. Remember those? Take out the Greek letters. You're left with initials of people's names. And almost every single one of those initials was the name of a Bible believer. Wow. Wow. Modern science came from Christian philosophy because the theologians started saying, hey, look at that. There's an all-powerful, all-creative God who never changes his mind. He's not fickle. King James said there's no shadow of turning with him. Love that. And God never does anything against his own nature. So if God created the universe, that ultimate lawgiver would have naturally have created a universe that operates according to law. That, my friends, was the birth of the modern scientific enterprise. And yet, about 100 years later, we had this thing called the Enlightenment. The philosophers started getting involved. And what they did is they took the scientific laws and they got rid of the scientific lawgiver. And this is where the naturalism came in. This is where the materialism came in. This is where the humanism came in. modern evolutionary theory is actually not only standing on the shoulders of Christians, but when they got rid of the Christians, now they're standing on the shoulders of nothing. There's no reason to believe the universe is constant. There's no reason to believe the laws of the universe are the same everywhere. If you assume they're the same everywhere, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you might get a big bang. But how do you know the speed of light's the same everywhere? How do you know the force of gravity, the electronic attractions inside the nucleus are the same everywhere? You can't know that. And all of a sudden, the universe gets really weird really quickly. But again, they don't want you. Have you ever heard anything like this in science class? History class? No, they don't want you to know it. But it is true. The universe is created. But it's also true the universe is naturalistic. In that, when I run an experiment, I don't think God's got his finger on the scale. When I run an experiment, I expect the results to be according to the laws of probability and big statistics and the laws of physics and chemistry. Right? I don't expect that there's a magical force that's changing my experiment in some direction. So the universe is naturalistic in that it always behaves according to the laws of science, except in the very rare case where God invokes a miracle, like raises from the dead, or raises a dead person from the dead, or heals a leper. Those are miracles. Those are special cases. But even if the universe is naturalistic, naturalism as a philosophy is terrible at explaining origins. See, the Christians invented naturalism. We invented the idea that the universe works according to law. But that naturalism doesn't explain where we came from. Because natural processes don't create complicated things. They create randomness. And life, by definition, is really complicated. Hebrews 11:3. By faith we understand the universe is created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. It almost sounds like he's talking about naturalism there. The things we see were not made by what we can observe happening around us. But it's a faith proposition. And I'm sorry, the evolutionist also has a faith proposition. You must start off, where I started my talk, you must start off by making some really big assumptions about the nature of reality. You have to. We're trapped in that world. You can't avoid it. And I love talking about that with people because it makes them uncomfortable fast. So let me give you another way of thinking about science. Imagine that science is just like an interpretive filter of reality. You're learning things, you're filtering through your way of understanding, you're trying to take those things and put them into some system of thought. And imagine that reality is these vertical red lines. And your way of thinking is the gray lines. Can you see that if your thinking is wonky, you still might get some things right? That's evolution. Absolutely, evolution gets some things right. In fact, it gets a lot of things right. It's not a theory with zero evidence. However, the evidence it gets right also fits in with creation. So I'm like, Mr. Evolutionist, what else you got? This is how I think. This is how the world works. This is how I got through all my scientists. It's like, okay, yeah, things change. Great. Yeah, it's because God organized it to be able to change. Hey, humans and chimpanzees are more similar than any other species. Okay, because God created them more similar. I'm not saying, though, that my filter is perfectly aligned with reality. But I'm saying that the more we understand the way God created and the nature of God, the better we'll understand the universe. We will never fully understand God because we're humans. But if we take a biblical approach to this and apply a biblical understanding to the way of the world, we'll have a better... It's sort of like, it looks like science is trucking along really well and all of a sudden did this giant detour. And they kept the groundwork and then they went off into La La Land trying to explain, metaphysically all this baggage that they can't explain, like the origin of life and things like that, the origin of complexity, the origin of the brain. So let me ask you another question. What's natural selection? What is it? Is nature selecting anything? No, nature's not alive. It's not like nature can think, but the phrase natural selection wasn't very satisfactory, so Herbert Spencer, Darwin's friend, came up with the phrase survival of the fittest. And Darwin said, yeah, that's a better phrase, even though that's not very good either. Because who's the most fit? The biggest, the strongest, the fastest? The one with the best eyesight, the smartest? No. By definition, fitness equals how many offspring an individual has. Oh, okay. So it should be called differential reproduction, but that's another horrible phrase. It's simply the organism with the most babies wins. Okay. I mean, is it hard to imagine that some fish in a stream and the fish have some genetic diversity in them, and some of them are like kind of like hard, they don't see well, so they drift out into the sunny areas and get eaten by storks? And the ones that see better stay in the shadows? Which one's going to survive? Which one's going to have more babies over the long term? Well, the one who stays in the shadows. That's called natural selection. That's like no big deal. It often backfires. In fact, an evolutionary application of natural selection was World War II. Now, I won't talk about Nazis, but the Germans, the Nazis, they didn't just kill off the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. They killed themselves off on purpose. They wanted to fight a war to kill off the weaker Germans, to purify their own race, to make them bigger and stronger. That was the goal of the war. But it backfired because which groups or which units had the highest casualty rates in the war? It was the SS groups, the cream of the crop. The ones who rushed, got blown up by everything. Who got the girls after the war? The baggage handlers. It backfired. Natural selection is only he or she who has the most number of offspring wins. That's not a big deal. But the examples we see, here's another example. Here's two bacteria. There's a mutant and a normal bacteria. The normal bacteria has a big old pore, so that purple antibiotic can get in, and so can the green food. But on the right, the degenerate pore, food gets in sometimes, so they grow slowly, antibiotic can't get in. Oh, wait a minute. In this example, the normal bacteria lives and dies, and the degenerate bacteria lives. It's got a broken something, so the antibiotic can't get into the cell. Most all the examples of antibiotic resistance that I know of, and there's probably a dozen of them, involve something broken. Sometimes it's a pore. Sometimes there's an enzyme on the inside that can actually break down that antibiotic if it comes in slow enough, or the thing is just broken onto the on position, so it produces tons and tons of that protein, so it can resist lots of antibiotics. But it's not healthy for the cell to produce that much of the protein. It's wasting its energy. It should be doing other things. So it actually grows slowly because there's an on switch that, it's like, imagine that if this building was liable to fire and the sprinkler system was broken in the on position. There'd never be a fire, but the building would be ruined. We see that case after case after case in evolutionary theory. Oh, look at this example of natural selection. I'm like, it's scorched earth. The thing is self-destructing in its attempt just to stay alive. So, again, change over time is not sufficient because most of the examples of change we see are downhill changes. You need uphill changes for evolution to be true. Let me give you a word picture. I got two worlds here. The world of evolution, the world of creation. Is it true that every fact I find that supports evolution is a disproof of creation? Is it true that every fact I find that supports creation is a disproof of evolution? No, of course not. Why? Because of that. We're both fighting over the same data set. And we can both explain a lot of the same data. So if you want to get into this creation evolution debate, forget natural selection. We both claim it. Forget change over time. We both claim it. You have to get outside the area of overlap into what I call, or the area of overlap I call non-discriminating information. information that can't be used to separate the two theories. But imagine the power of this. You start off with a textbook that's talking about evolution. It says, this is true, 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 this is true. All those things support evolution, therefore evolution is true. And yet, most everything they said was true, I agree with, even though I'm not an evolutionist. You see the power of that? If you're not given the alternate explanation, it seems like evolution just wins. It's just a default. It's a true. It's a fact. I would have said that when I was 18, 19 years old. Evolution's a fact. I would have thrown that right in your face. But there's some stuff I didn't know yet. Lots of stuff I didn't know yet. Think of the smallest thing that you can see. Maybe a speck of dust floating in a light beam. What's the largest thing that you can see? And you know how big it is. You don't know how big the sun is. You don't know how big the moon is. You know how big your car is. I bet you know how big your house is. If you lived in it for a while, your apartment, your house, you've probably been in every nook and cranny, up on the roof, in the basement, right? You have a pretty good idea. But you don't know how big your neighborhood is. If you put on a blindfold, you couldn't pace across the neighborhood. But if you put on a blindfold, you could probably navigate through your house, right? Okay. What's the shortest time increment you can notice? The blink of an eye. What's the longest time increment you can notice? Life? Yeah. Well, the pastor went. Anyway, I'm staying near your pastor's house. And his wife is explaining to me this tree in the backyard that was planted when their son was like 3 months old or something like that. And so now this tree is, I don't know, 30, I'm going to say 30. I forgot how old the son is. You know him, I don't. This tree is 30-something years old now, right? It's been growing this man's entire life. So that man has a tree that he's watched grow for his entire life. That's the longest time interval of anything he can know is true. But what about history? How old is the universe? When we can only experience a small window of history, how do we build a model of the universe's history? Well, we can compile all of human experience, if we can trust ancient historians, which we really can't. But we can compile all that, and we can go back a few thousand years. And that's it. Written records don't go back before that. So we have this zone of direct observation, which is limited in size and in time. And now we've added telescopes and microscopes and atomic clocks. So we've increased our zone of direct observation with a zone of instrumentation. But notice there's still a cutoff in the historical period. We don't have time machines. We can't go back and actually know. And yet, that's not what we're fighting about. The evolution-creation debate is outside of that. The zone of deduction, lucky guesses if you would, this is where the creation-evolution debate is. And mostly, we're arguing about views of history. But again, no time machines, and history only happens once. Experimental science is observable, testable, and repeatable right now, today, in the laboratory. History is a one-off thing that happened in the past and no one today alive witnessed. That's the evolution-creation debate. Look at Isaiah 46:10. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say my purpose will stand. I will do all that I please. How can God know the end from the beginning? How can God know all things? Consider everything God created is stuck on the arrow of time. Everything. Even angels. When Jesus met the man of the Gadarenes, and the demon said, "What have you to do with us? Have you come to torment us before our time?" Even angels are stuck on this linear time. God, however, is not. If you were to look at time, you can't see the whole thing. You can look to the beginning, look to the end. You have to look back and forth, right? You can't see time unless you go, even then I got to look left and right to see it. But if God's not trapped in time, God's a higher dimensional being. And just like me, the four-dimensional being, I can take this object and rotate it. So could God. And if he takes an arrow of time and does this, it becomes a point. And if you look at it correctly, all things collapse to be simultaneous. This is why time is not a mystery to God. He's outside it. In fact, I think he created it. That was one of my mind-blowing revelations right there. Let's do another mind-blowing thing. Let's take a look at something that happens inside your bodies. This is the ATP synthase motor complex. It operates with essentially 100% efficiency, which is shocking, but it's also the world's smallest electric motor. But it doesn't run on electrons, it runs on protons. And these protons turn these protein motor things, and they take these crazy chemicals, ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and phosphate. Joins them together, makes adenosine triphosphate. Wait, phosphate isn't found in nature, hardly ever. This is why you have to add phosphates to your fields if you're a farmer. If a phosphate touches a metal, iron, whatever metal, magnesium, it forms an insoluble salt. And it's trapped in chemical form, and almost no organisms can break that bond. Some bacteria can, under special circumstances. So phosphate is a limiting reagent in the biological world. But adenosine diphosphate is a crazy complicated molecule that cannot be formed through random chemistry. It's a highly reactive molecule. So we're taking an improbable molecule called phosphate and reacting it with an incredibly difficult to form molecule, ADP, to make an incredibly super reactive molecule called ATP. This is all the energy in your cells. Your body is taking sugars, breaking down the sugars to make ATP, and ATP is powering most everything that happens in your body. You make your own weight of ATP every day, and you almost instantly burn it up. This motor is required for all life forms. But to make the motor, you need ATP. To have DNA, you need a lot of ATP to make the proteins that are used to keep the DNA from falling apart. You need ATP to make the proteins that are used to transcribe the DNA into RNA. You need ATP to make the protein RNA complex that is used to translate this RNA into protein. You need ATP to modify the protein after the fact, because most proteins are modified. The transfer RNAs are modified usually by about 20 different proteins themselves. You need all of these things that require ATP to make the ATP synthase motor. It's not a chicken and egg problem. It's a spaghettified chicken and egg problem. This is not just irreducible complexity. It's spaghettification of irreducible complexity. It's thousands of parts that must be present simultaneously or life can't exist. And you can tell me that's going to evolve by itself? Psalm 139:14, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My friends, does your soul know this very well? If not, I suggest to you that there's a biblical answer to your existence that is much different than the existence that you currently think is true. And maybe it's time to start looking at the Bible and seeing who this God is. Because this didn't come about by chance. Alvin Plantinga, famous philosopher, not young earth creationist, but, I don't think he's a Christian, but he's different. He says, if you exclude the supernatural from science, then if the world or some phenomenon within it are supernaturally caused, as most of the world's people believe, you won't be able to reach that truth scientifically. Observing methodological naturalism thus hamstrings science by precluding science from reaching what would be an enormously important truth about the world. It might be that just as a result of this constraint, that's naturalism, even the best science in the long run will wind up with false conclusions. The Bible says, it is He, God, who made the earth by His power, established the world by His wisdom, and by His understanding stretched out the heavens. That's not something you can know scientifically. It's something we can derive probabilistically when we look at the world. We look at biology. It's like, this did not come about by itself. That's an obvious conclusion one can use. But it's not a proof. There's no proof in any of this. Oh, but man, the implications. This is Bill Provine, who died of brain cancer. In fact, he wrote this while he was dying of brain cancer. Famous scientist. Let me summarize my views on what modern evolutionary biology tells us loud and clear. There are no gods, no purposes, no goal-directed forces of any kind. There's no life after death. When I die, I'm absolutely certain I'm going to be dead. That's the end for me. There's no ultimate foundation for ethics, no ultimate meaning to life, and no free will for humans either. That is a reductionist approach coming from naturalistic, materialistic, in fact, determinism even. He believes that our thoughts are preconditioned from the genes we inherited from our monkey, even our fish ancestors. And so you're just a chemical reaction factory that's trying to have babies. And your emotional state, the thoughts you have, are only from evolution. That's funny, because if that's true, how would we even know if evolution was true or not? Because we can't think our own thoughts. That's funny. John, chapter 1. This is like something everyone learns in their introductory Greek class, and arche and halagos, kai halagos and prastante and kai theos and halagos. Right? You all know that? All right, sorry. In the beginning. That, by the way, is the opening words of a book of Genesis in Greek. In the beginning was the Word. What's a word? The Word was with God. Oh, the Word was God. Okay, so there's a Word and it's God. He was in the beginning with God. So this is starting to sound very Trinitarian all of a sudden, isn't there? All things were made through Him, that is, the Word. And without Him, the Word, was not anything made that was made. Because, see, God isn't made. So all things that are made, except for God there. And then this Word, as part of the Trinity, became flesh and dwelt among us in verse 14. Wait a minute. Jesus Christ is the creator of the universe. It's not just any random part of the Trinity. It's the God-man who came to this earth and lived on this earth with us. He's the creator of us. Evolution is actually directly attacking the gospel. Weird. Well, after all that said, consider Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1-3. After all this crazy stuff in science you just learned, therefore, we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. For since the message declared by angels proved to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? My friends, once we consider the nature of reality, the only rational conclusion is that there must be a God of reality. Now, if we reject that God, we're reduced to this nihilistic, deterministic, there's no meaning or purpose to anything. And I don't want to live in a world like that. I mean, I've had enough hard stuff happen in my life. I wouldn't be alive right now if I expected nothing later. Why be alive? Why? I mean, the world can stink. And Americans, you guys got it easy. There's plenty of other places in the world where obviously life is really hard and it's not worth living unless there's a reward at the end. There's a hope for the person who's stuck here. And what is our hope? Our hope's in Christ alone. Christ the Creator. Christ who made you. Christ who died for you. You cloud of gas, that's what you are. Okay, we're gonna end there. I could ramble forever. There's a lot more of sorts of things in our Creation magazine. There's things in the basement also. I'm going to refer you to our Evolution's Achilles Heels, the book and the documentary. There's powerful information against the evolutionary thought process. I'll refer you to Biblical Geology 101. It's my first book I've ever, actually I was a co-author, but this is my first real book. I have another book coming out very soon, Biblical Biology 101. And I'm the only author of that book, my first ever solo book. So we also have so many different types of things, like the Genesis Academy is a 12-part teaching series on the book of Genesis. There's even a study guide that I wrote that's online for it. We've got kids' books, like Exploring Geology, with Mr. Hibb, Little Cricket. 2 talks from now, we're going to come back for a talk is very similar to this. It's called The Historical Atom, Theological Conundrums and Scientific Implications. This is the first of our streaming videos we put online on our website, and it's free. This one is free. So if you can't come for the third talk this morning, you can watch it on creation.com. If you want to hear it again, it's there. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we have a massive social media campaign. We are an information ministry producing things for people like you. Okay, it's going to get easier from here on out. But we started off with the hard stuff. You all right? All right. Sir?
Thanks, Rob. That was awesome, and we appreciate it. I want to just mention a couple things real quick. We're going to be back here at 10:40, so it's 10:18 now. It will give you 23 minutes. The bookstore is downstairs if you'd like to take a look. The food is outdoors. There is snacks and refreshments. It cannot be brought upstairs, unfortunately, because we don't like to clean the rug too often. But you can eat it outstairs. You can eat some food while you're browsing in the bookstore if you want to. There is coffee and some other stuff down there, I think, as well. We are streaming this, and if you go home and you liked it, you want to watch it again, or if you want to tell your friends about it, every episode we have will be on our YouTube channel. You can go to our website, CCMarlton.org, click on the big red YouTube banner, and you'll get to it. I think one of the most amazing scriptures he mentioned, I love it, from Hebrews, what is seen is not made out of things that are visible. That's just an amazing statement to have been written 2,000 years ago. That's just because physicists know that today, but God's word knew it before time began. So I hope you're being blessed. The next talk is about dinosaurs and fossils, and you're going to find that to be very interesting also. Please keep an eye on the time and be back up here at 10:40. Thanks.